Welcome to Wealth Hustle 247 podcast, your trusted guide to financial literacy, business innovation, and entrepreneurial success. Learn how to grow your wealth, make informed decisions, and turn your ideas into profitable ventures.
Someone in Nigeria started a side hustle with just 50,000 naira. Today it brings in over 2 million Nigerian nairas every month. How did they do it? Welcome to Side Hustle Case Studies, Real Success Stories, Nigeria and Africa Edition.
Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a pretty fascinating stack of research to get through today.
We really do. It's heavily numbers driven.
Yeah, exactly. We are looking at a paper titled Side Hustle Case Studies, Real Success Stories, the Nigeria and Africa Edition. And, when you hear that phrase...
Side hustle.
Right, side hustle, your mind probably jumps straight to the generic advice we see everywhere online.
Oh, absolutely. The endless social media threads.
The ones telling you to just wake up earlier, grind harder, and magically build a second income.
Which is exhausting and usually lacks any real substance.
Exactly. But the sources we're exploring today completely strip away that vague motivation. Instead, we are looking at a purely numbers-driven, grounded analysis of what it actually takes to build a structured secondary income stream.
It's all about the mechanics.
Right. We are going to look under the hood at the precise financial breakdowns, the local realities, and the profit margins of real people operating in, frankly, highly volatile markets.
The contrast between the typical hustle culture rhetoric and the hard, undeniable mathematics presented in this paper is stark.
It really is.
The introduction sets a very specific macro context that is vital for understanding the numbers we are about to explore. Across Nigeria and scaling across the broader African continent, side hustles have evolved.
They aren't just hobbies anymore.
No, not at all. They are no longer just a casual way to make a little extra weekend pocket money. That era is largely over.
Yeah.
According to the text, these structured secondary income streams have fundamentally transitioned into critical wealth-building tools and, in many cases, outright survival mechanisms.
Survival mechanisms, that's a strong phrase. The paper specifically points to three massive economic pressures driving this shift. We've got rising inflation, currency volatility, and intense general economic pressure.
A perfect storm, really.
Exactly, and I want to spend a second on that because when the value of your primary currency is fluctuating wildly and inflation is just aggressively eating away at your purchasing power at the grocery store,
relying on a single source of salary income becomes incredibly risky.
it's terrifying for a lot of people. These intense pressures have pushed millions of people to develop rigorously structured lifeboats.
Which is an excellent way to frame it. A lifeboat requires engineering, not just enthusiasm.
Right.
Whether you are actively trying to outpace inflation in your own personal finances, or if you are simply fascinated by how grassroots economies adapt, innovate, and thrive under intense pressure, the case studies in this source material provide a masterclass in real-world economics.
We are moving past the theory.
Yes, we're looking at how these lifeboats are actually constructed, dollar by dollar, and naira by naira.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start by looking at the physical economy. The paper kicks things off with case study 1, focusing on mini importation in Lagos.
The logistics hub.
Exactly. So we are talking about physical products crossing international borders and being sold locally. The paper notes an initial capital deployment of 300,000 naira. I know the source breaks down the landed costs and the final margins, so how does that capital actually flow through a single business cycle?
The efficiency of the capital deployment here is what immediately stands out. The entrepreneur uses that 300,000 naira to purchase exactly 100 units of a physical product.
Okay, 100 units.
And the text states that these units come in at a landed cost of 7,500 naira each.
Landed costs. Let's define that real quick.
It's a crucial term. It means this price includes the cost of the item itself, plus the international shipping, the customs duties at the bustling Lagos ports, and the logistics required to actually get it into the importer's hands.
So it's the all-in price to get it to their front door.
Precisely. They then turn around and sell those 100 units at a retail price of 15,000 naira each.
Wow. So they are essentially doubling their money on the sale price.
They are.
They gross 1.5 million naira on a 750,000 naira inventory. But the paper is very careful to distinguish between gross revenue and the actual money you take home.
Always a critical distinction.
It states the net profit is approximately 600,000 naira per cycle. That implies a gap of about 150,000 naira going toward localized operational expenses. Where is that money going?
It goes into the friction of moving physical goods. You have to market the products, perhaps buying Instagram or WhatsApp ads.
Right, customer acquisition.
And you have last-mile delivery costs. Navigating Legos traffic using dispatch riders to get the product to the end consumer is not cheap. Packaging, internet data, phone calls.
It all chips away at the gross margin.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is how this connects perfectly to one of the 4 core lessons the paper explicitly highlights at the end. Cash flow management ensures survival.
Because if you look at that 600,000 naira net profit, the temptation might be to treat that as purely disposable income.
Go buy a new phone, go out to dinner.
Right. But in a physical product cycle, if you eat your profits, the business starves.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
In the mini importation model, net profit isn't just a reward. It is the essential lifeblood required to fund the next import cycle.
You have to buy the next batch.
If you mismanage that cash, say, if you fail to account for rising customs duties on the next shipment, or if you spend the capital meant for the next batch of 100 units on personal expenses,
The entire business collapses instantly.
there is no passive income here. You have to manage the flow of cash meticulously to survive to the next cycle, especially when dealing with the fluctuating exchange rate between the naira and the currency of the manufacturing country.
You have to keep the cycle spinning, and you have to protect your principal investment at all costs.
Exactly.
Now, I want to transition to another tangible goods hustle, but one operating on a vastly different scale and with a completely different set of risks.
Case study 3.
Yes, case study 3 looks at a poultry farm in Ibadan. We are moving from inanimate imported goods to living, breathing inventory.
The scale increases dramatically here, and so does the physical and operational demand. The paper notes this is a facility with a 500-bird capacity.
The financial breakdown the text provides is intense. The production cost to run this 500-bird cycle is roughly 2 million naira.
A massive upfront commitment.
Huge, but the payout reflects the risk. The revenue generated at the end of the cycle is about 3.75 million naira, which leaves a net profit of around 1.3 million naira.
Very lucrative.
But keeping 500 birds alive and profitable, that sounds like a logistical nightmare. What does that 2 million naira production cost actually represent?
It represents an incredibly fragile ecosystem. You are buying day-old chicks, which are highly susceptible to disease.
Right. You can lose a huge percentage right there.
You have to purchase specialized feed, which fluctuates in price based on agricultural yields and inflation. You need veterinary care, vaccines, and critically, you need temperature control and lighting.
And power infrastructure isn't always reliable.
Exactly. In a region where the national power grid can be unreliable, maintaining the environment for 500 birds often means running backup generators.
Which means buying diesel or petrol.
And the cost of fuel alone can completely destroy your profit margins if you haven't factored it into that 2 million naira production budget.
Which makes me think about the pure physical toll on the entrepreneur. If you oversleep, or if you forget to secure the feed, your inventory literally dies.
It's unforgiving.
It's not like a box of imported electronics that can just sit in a closet for an extra week.
This perfectly illustrates another core lesson from the text. Systems outperform hustle energy.
That's a great line.
It's the absolute truth of scaling a physical business. You might be able to use raw, energetic hustle to sell a handful of imported items to your friends, but you cannot hustle 500 chickens into staying alive and reaching market weight.
Motivation doesn't power a heat lamp.
Exactly. You need rigorous, unbreakable operational systems. You need a reliable feeding schedule, an automated or strictly managed cleaning system, and a contingency plan for power outages.
Because if the system breaks down,
The birds don't survive, and that 1.3 million net profit disappears overnight.
hustle gets the farm built, but the system keeps the operation alive.
Precisely.
We've spent a lot of time on tangible, physical goods and the logistical friction that comes with them. But the paper also takes us into a completely different environment where physical borders essentially disappear.
The digital shift.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's shift gears to the digital world. The text introduces Case Study 2, freelance graphic design based in Abuja.
This is a crucial pivot in the research because it moves us from physical logistics to the service and digital economy.
A whole new ballgame.
This operates by an entirely different set of rules. You don't have shipping containers, customs agents, or feed costs. Your primary overhead is your skill, your computer, and your internet connection.
And the paper breaks down the local monthly averages for this designer, giving us a great baseline. It lists that one-off projects like logos and branding work bring in about 200,000 naira a month.
Solid baseline.
On top of that, they secure retainers, which is recurring, steady work from reliable clients, providing another 150,000 naira.
Giving them stability.
So locally, just operating within Nigeria, this freelance designer is bringing in a steady total of about 350,000 naira a month. That alone is a solid, structured secondary income.
It is very solid, and for many, that would be a successful endpoint.
Yeah.
But the ultimate pivot in this specific case study, the move that completely changes the financial trajectory and security of this hustle, is the geographical expansion.
They took it global.
The text notes that this designer expanded their client base internationally using freelance platforms to earn between $1,000 to $2,000 monthly.
That is a massive leap in earning power, and crucially, they're earning in US dollars now. Why is that distinction so important based on the broader economic picture the paper painted?
It connects directly back to the macro context we discussed at the very beginning of the deep dive. Remember the driving forces, rising inflation, and currency volatility.
Right.
When you are earning strictly in a local currency that is depreciating against global markets, your purchasing power shrinks even if your income stays exactly the same.
You're running in place.
Or falling behind. By taking their digital services to an international market and earning in US dollars, this designer has essentially built a fortress against that local currency volatility.
The dollar acts as a shield.
The US dollar acts as a powerful hedge. If the local currency drops in value, their dollar earnings actually yield more local purchasing power.
That completely neutralizes one of the biggest economic risks they face. Because a physical product has borders. You have to deal with local inflation to ship those 100 mini importation units or buy fuel for the poultry farm.
You're tied to the local economy.
But a graphic design file has no physical weight.
A digital skill can be monetized anywhere on the planet with a stable internet connection. It allows the creator to tap into stronger economies and stronger currencies without having to physically migrate. And this captures another core lesson explicitly stated in the paper. Skill monetization scales globally.
Which flows perfectly into our next digital example, but this one relies on a completely different model of monetization.
The media side.
I want to look at case study 4, a YouTube creator operating specifically in the finance niche. And what I really want you to pay attention to here is the timeline. The paper breaks the financial data down by year, and it tells a fascinating story of delayed gratification.
The timeline is arguably the most critical part of this particular case study. It exposes the reality of the creator economy, which is often heavily romanticized online.
Year 1 is painted as an absolute grind. According to the text, despite doing all the work, the scripting, filming, editing, uploading, this creator is making only $300 to $500 a month for the entire first year.
Which is incredibly demoralizing for most people.
To put that in perspective, they are essentially working a demanding second job for a fraction of what a traditional part-time job might pay. But then, Year 2 explodes.
The tipping point.
The monthly income jumps to $1,500 purely from AdSense revenue. And on top of that, they start landing massive brand deals ranging from 500,000 to 1 million naira per campaign. How does someone survive that first year, and what causes that sudden explosive tipping point in Year 2?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this explosive growth is the perfect embodiment of the final core lesson listed in our source text. Reinvestment accelerates scale.
Reinvestment.
Think about the psychology required to survive Year 1. You are putting in professional-level effort for amateur-level pay. Most people quit there because the immediate ROI is terrible.
Right. They see the $300 and walk away.
But this creator didn't view the $300 a month as a low salary. They viewed it as seed capital.
They took whatever resources they had and poured them back into the machine.
Precisely. They reinvested those small initial earnings into better audio equipment, better editing software, or simply reinvested their time to study the YouTube algorithm and improve their thumbnail designs.
Building the foundation.
That lean first year wasn't a failure. It was a construction phase. They spent Year 1 building the audience system, and the YouTube algorithm operates on exponential growth, not linear growth.
It compounds.
Once that audience system reached a critical mass of trust and engagement, it unlocked those massive Year 2 payouts.
And the text specifically notes they are in the finance niche. From an advertising perspective, brands are willing to pay those massive 500,000 to 1 million Naira campaign rates because an audience watching finance videos is highly targeted.
Extremely valuable demographics.
They are actively looking for investment tools, banking apps, or financial advice. The creator built a highly valuable pipeline to a specific demographic.
Reinvestment is what turned a slow, painful grind into a highly lucrative media property. You build the engine in year 1 so it can drive you in year 2.
All right, we have one final example from the paper to cover, and this one strips away the digital borders and brings us right back to the physical neighborhood.
This one is pure infrastructure.
Let's look at case study 5. POS, or agency banking. For listeners who might not be familiar with how this operates in regions like Nigeria, imagine a human ATM.
That's a great way to visualize it.
These are local entrepreneurs equipped with point-of-sale machines who provide cash withdrawals, deposits, and transfers in neighborhoods that might be miles away from a traditional bank branch. It operates as essential community infrastructure.
It's a very unique model compared to freelance design or YouTube because it is deeply embedded in the physical daily routines of the local public. You aren't seeking out an international client. Your client is your neighbor who needs cash for the market.
The numbers the text lays out for this are shockingly efficient. The startup capital required to buy the machine, secure a small kiosk or umbrella stand, and have a float of cash ranges between 250,000 and 500,000 Naira.
Very accessible barrier to entry.
But the return is staggering. The monthly profit generated is between 240,000 and 450,000 Naira. So what does this all mean?
It means we are looking at an incredible ROI timeline. Let's analyze those numbers side by side. If your startup cost is on the lower end, say 250,000 Naira, and your monthly profit is 240,000 Naira.
Your monthly profit is almost entirely covering your initial startup cost.
You are essentially making back your entire initial investment in roughly 4 to 5 weeks.
That is almost unheard of in traditional business models. You usually expect to be in the red for a year or more. What is driving that kind of velocity?
The velocity is driven by absolute necessity. A POS or agency banking setup isn't a luxury service. It provides immediate, neighborhood-level access to the financial system.
It's solving a daily friction point.
In areas where traditional bank networks are sparse, or where the ATMs frequently run out of cash or experience network failures, these local agents bridge the gap. People are willing to pay a small convenience fee for a transaction because the alternative is so much worse.
Paying for transport to a distant bank and standing in line for hours.
Exactly. The alternative is more expensive in both time and money. Because it is a daily necessity, the volume of transactions is incredibly high and consistent. High volume on a low-margin essential service translates to rapid, reliable profit generation for the agent.
It's fascinating to step back and look at the sheer diversity of these models. We've gone from navigating the busy ports of Lagos to import physical goods to managing the delicate ecosystem of a 500-bird poultry farm in Ibadan.
Incredible range.
We've seen how a graphic designer in Abuja hedges against inflation by tapping into the global digital economy, how a YouTube creator leverages delayed gratification to build a media engine, right down to the neighborhood level of setting up grassroots banking infrastructure.
But the paper doesn't just leave us with these isolated case studies.
No, it synthesizes all this data into a powerful conclusion.
The source paper distills everything we've discussed into one definitive statement about how these ventures evolve. It reminds us that these endeavors only transition from being fragile, temporary side hustles into true, durable wealth engines when 3 strict conditions are met.
The text is very specific here. The 3 conditions are: profits must be reinvested, systems must be built, and discipline must be maintained.
Reinvesting profits, building systems, and maintaining discipline. It is an unforgiving formula. Without all 3, a side hustle remains just a fleeting way to make a few extra bucks until the market changes or your energy runs out.
Which happens to so many people.
But when you apply those 3 principles, whether you are managing physical inventory, digital clients, or local cash flow, the hustle becomes a self-sustaining wealth engine. This raises an important question.
Yeah.
As you listen to these real-world breakdowns, I want you to reflect on your own situation. Look at the resources, the time, and the specific skills you currently have available to you. Which of these models best aligns with your life right now? Are you better suited to managing the complex physical cycles of tangible goods?
Or do you have digital skills that could cross borders and hedge against local economic pressures?
Or are you positioned to provide essential daily infrastructure to your own community?
It's the perfect question to ask yourself as we wrap up this deep dive. You have the raw data and the structural breakdowns now. But I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own as you think about building your own lifeboats. We've established that the transition from a mere side hustle to a powerful wealth engine relies entirely on building unbreakable systems rather than just relying on raw, exhaustible hustle energy.
Right.
So, at what exact point does a side hustle stop being a side hustle and simply become your main business? When the system is running smoothly and the revenue outpaces your primary income, do you keep it on the side or do you let the lifeboat become the main ship? I challenge you to define what the tipping point of those systems looks like in your own ambitions. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the real world mechanics of secondary income. We will see you next time.
That's it for today's episode of Wealth Hustle 247. Be sure to follow, like, comment, and share with others. Keep pushing toward your goals, and we'll see you in the next episode.